And welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam VECENIE. We're presented by The Athletic and CLNS Media. Part 2 of that big Northwest Division preview is upcoming here with good friend of the program, Fred Katz. As I mentioned in the previous episode, we're going to talk about the Denver Nuggets, the Utah Jazz, and the Portland Trail Blazers in this episode. I think all three of those teams, as I said at the top of the last episode, have reasonable cases to be mentioned as like top 13 teams in the entire NBA. And I feel like it's rare for a division like that to have such strong teams at the top. Wouldn't you agree, Fred?
Yeah, I would say that is true, although I can't wait to hear your full analysis on Portland. That's what I can't wait for.
I feel like I'm a little bit higher on Portland than what you are at the very least, but we'll get into that later on. But first, let's talk about the Denver Nuggets. This is a really weird team for me to kind of figure out. So they were obviously one of the best teams offensively in the league whenever Nikola Jokic entered the starting lineup consistently. I believe that was, probably mid to late December, if I remember correctly. They were also just atrocious defensively. And they obviously bring in Paul Millsap now. I'll make a case that I think that they're going to be a little bit worse offensively. I think that Gallinari to Millsap is a little bit of a downgrade offensively. Paul Millsap's really, really good offensively, and I don't say that lightly. But Gallinari and Jokic had a really good synergy together that worked really well on the offensive end. As well as Gary Harris, too. I shouldn't neglect to say him as well. Defensively, they're going to be leaps and bounds better just because Millsap, for me, is probably one of the 5 or 6 best defenders in the NBA right now. So it's a big, big improvement for Millsap to come in. This is a team that finished, I believe, 40-42 last year.
Yeah, that's right.
They're 9 wins ahead of the curve on where Minnesota was. And they went out and added an all-star of their own in Paul Millsap. He's worse than Jimmy Butler, but it's, an all-star of their own from the Eastern Conference. I think this team is right. I think that a lot of people consider them to be a tier below the Timberwolves right now, or maybe the Timberwolves are at the top of the same tier and Denver is at the bottom. I think those two teams are basically pretty equal in my mind.
I'm picking Denver for the 5.
I don't think that's crazy at all for what it's worth.
I really like them. I mean, I love Millsap. I agree. I mean, he's the most underrated defensive player in the NBA.
I agree with that.
The way he is able to get his hands on, he just gets involved in every passing lane to the point that guys don't want to pass the ball when he's helping. Like, he's able to deter passes. Like, it's an amazing thing to watch.
So Paul Millsap, I just kind of want to run through the growth process of Paul Millsap, because to me it's fucking bananas, right? This is a guy that when he came out of Louisiana Tech was an undersized center rebounder, right? He was not a guy that people thought would ever be able to guard on the perimeter or have any sort of perimeter game. He was an 8-foot and in offensive player. He was a killer offensive and defensive rebounder, one of the best in the NCAA, if not the best in the NCAA, whenever he declared for the draft. And a guy that was slow-footed because he was 260 pounds and couldn't move as well as he needed to move. To go from that to what he is now is maybe the most impressive development process once a player has gotten into the NBA. He's probably right around 240 pounds right now. That is the most impressive development that a player has undertaken in the NBA since I've been covering the NBA, I think. It is incredible that he has gone from where he was as a college player to what he is now, which is literally an entirely different player. Most players who, become more multifaceted and more skilled, you can at least see where it came from what their college profile was. With Millsap, it's nothing. There's nothing there. He is totally morphed into a different player due to work ethic, due to just being so remarkably intelligent in the way that he plays the game. And it's just a remarkable story to me that this is what he is now. He is really, a true all-star level player in this NBA.
So Sam, you know this. You just made me think of something that, well, I think it's interesting. Who knows if anybody else will? But you're probably like the best person I know to answer this question. So I'm going to ask you. You said that Millsap has changed the most since like his college profile. Who else is who's number 2 and number 3 on that list? Is Damari Carroll on that list?
Carroll would be close. He would make sense. I'm someone who needs...
You're talking purely stylistically, right?
Purely stylistically.
Boris Diaw, does he count even though he was in college?
I didn't see Diaw whenever he was...
But Diaw was
overseas. Yeah, I don't know enough about Boris Diaw's development process. Rudy Gobert is, stylistically a similar player, but just the body differential that he's undertaken since entering the NBA has been remarkable. I'm trying to think. That's a really tough question. Who else would even be close to this?
I'm trying to think of
Kawhi Leonard's a really good example.
Yeah, that's true. Kawhi is a really good example.
Kawhi was 4. Yeah, he was a 4 who literally shot. Let me pull it up here.
Was he shot 28% or something?
25% in his 2 years from 3 at San Diego State. 74% from the foul line. Could not shoot at all. But similarly to what he is now, he was an excellent perimeter defender. He was a great multi-positional defender. You could see the semblance of what he was going to become at some point if the jump shot ever came along, which it came along in a manner that nobody could ever imagine. And I think that that's also a similar circumstance, to what we're talking about here with Millsap. With Millsap, though, it's literally every single facet of his game has improved, to become this modern threat in the NBA that I don't think anyone ever saw coming.
Yeah, no, he's a great passer too. I mean, he and Jokic, that's an argument for the best passing big duo in the league.
I think they probably are. I will say that they probably are the best passing big
duo. I haven't gone through it, but they probably are, right? Yeah. I haven't gone through every one of them. They got to be. I mean, Jokic is the best passing big man in the league. Him and Draymond and Blake Griffin are the 3 best probably. And
Millsap's in that next tier. Draymond, Dre's another guy that he's changed a lot, but a lot of it has to do with body. The defensive instincts were there whenever he was at Michigan State. He was all Big Ten defensively.
Yeah, but you didn't think he was going to be a rim protector, though.
Yeah, a lot of it was more statistically because he got his hands in passing lanes because he was really smart. He blocked shots because they stuck him in the middle a lot of the time. It made sense that he would become, if he could ever lose weight, that he would become a really good defender. But to become as mobile as Draymond Green has become is something that nobody could have ever seen either.
Yeah, no, even Bob Myers was how the hell did that happen?
Yeah, no, when Draymond Green was drafted, look, the Warriors can say what they want, but there's no way they thought they were getting literally the best defensive player in the NBA.
Of course they didn't. You know how they didn't think they were getting that? Because if they thought they were getting that, they would have traded up to get him. Well, they wouldn't have let him fall to him. They would have said, oh my God, are you kidding me? If he's going to be the best defensive player in the NBA, yeah, we'll give you a future top 20 protected first rounder for him.
They also would not have taken Festus Ezeli ahead of him.
yeah, that too.
So
that's very true. Denver's going to be good, though. Denver, I think Gary Harris is good. Gary Harris, there's a weird, among the niche basketball Twitter crowd, there's a weird, Gary Harris battle going on. There are Gary Harris stans, which is a really weird thing. And then there are Gary Harris detractors, which is also a really good thing. He's not quite good enough to have either of those, but I do really like his game. I think he's going to be really good. He's a two-way player. He can shoot. He's a really good on-ball defender. I'm into Gary Harris. I think he's going to progress.
Yeah, I think
he's going to progress really nicely this year.
I thought I was a Gary Harris stan. I had him rated as a lottery pick in the draft. I thought that, he was going to be a really excellent complementary player in the NBA, one of the best complementary players in the NBA, and I still believe that. I thought that like I was incredibly high on him whenever I put him on my top 23 or top 25 players 23 and under list. Like I got yelled at for having him too low, and I was like, "Whoa, there are Gary Harris people out there
for sure." But man,
he's awesome. Like I love him, but like
this team's going to be good. They couldn't defend a lick last season, and they will certainly be better because they got Paul Millsap. But man, that offense last year, like you talk about the offense might be a little bit worse. I actually don't necessarily agree with that. Millsap's 3-point percentage has really taken a dip the last few years. I mean, he's really been like a 32 or 33% 3-point shooter the last few years, as opposed to that 1 year when he had that nice tick from three. I think that was the first year really started shooting them in volume. But I mean, their offense last year, you look at the numbers after Christmas, they're better offense than the Warriors. Like they're the best offense in the NBA after Christmas, and that's really when they started playing Jokic and running the offense through him, and they realized like, what they had in him, which it's funny that it took them that long to realize, like, oh, look at this guy who we've got who can average like 22, 12, and 6 if we give him enough minutes, and we can run our offense through him, and he can be what's going to end up being a perennial all-star. So I think this offense is just going to flow amazingly. I am really excited to see what happens to the offense. They could be like one of the most fun, like regardless of the winning, like they could be one of the most fun teams. Like they're like people do like their league pass top 5, like the 5 teams you want to get league pass. Like they will 100% be one of my league pass teams.
Yeah, that I 100% agree with too. They're a really good team. They also had a really bizarre offseason beyond the Paul Millsap signing.
Like the Plumlee contract?
Well, the Plumlee contract, for those who don't know, he just re-signed this week, 3 years, $41 million. Do we have specifics on like if that last year is an option at all? Because
I don't know.
For that deal to even be defendable, like that last year has to be a team option. Otherwise, it makes no sense. Like I didn't really like the deal at the time. I killed them for making the deal.
My guess, Sam, is that it's more likely the last year is a partial guarantee than a team option.
Yeah, possibly. But like I killed that deal at the time. I didn't think it made sense to give up both Nurkic and a first for Mason Plumlee, but whatever. They backed themselves into a corner, and now they had to pay him. So what can you do? There was that move, and then there was also trading number 13 overall for Trey Lyles, and then taking Tyler Lydon with the pick that they got from Utah as well, number 24 overall. So they essentially traded, what could have been Donovan Mitchell, and ended up being Donovan Mitchell. I think they probably should have just taken Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah, that's the guy they could have needed. I like him.
For 2 power forwards, whenever they already have, and they had plans on signing Paul Millsap. They already had Kenneth Faried. They had Danilo Gallinari's bird rights. They have Juancho Hernan-Gomez, who I think a lot of people think is a very good basketball player and will be a rotation player for them this year. Like, they had Darrell Arthur on this roster too at that time, and still continue to have Darrell Arthur. Nothing about that move made any sense to me. Like, a lot of what they've done beyond Millsap didn't make any sense to me, but it's almost not going to matter because they still have so much young talent, and now they also have Paul Millsap, who's going to help that young talent develop and foster.
It's in line with the organization, though. Like, the Nuggets have too many players, but dating back to, like, the George Karl Nuggets, when was the last time the Nuggets didn't have too many players? Yeah, when was the last time you didn't look at their roster? Even when they're not good the last couple of years, you look at the roster, it's like, man, the Nuggets have, like, 12 guys who could conceivably be in a rotation. Like, you look at them and you're like, they should really trade Faried, or they should really trade Wilson Chandler, or they should really trade Gallo. And, like, that was, like, the thing for, like, 2 years straight, and they didn't trade any of them. And then they lose Gallo, and they bring in Millsap, and it looks like they could put themselves, Plumlee's probably going to leave, or maybe he's going to come back if they can get him on a really cheap deal, which is fine because you're getting him on a good contract because his free agency went 2 months, so it all looks like it's working out fine. They're going to have a normal amount of players. They're not going to have too many mouths to feed, and they just they got too many guys again. They've got 12 guys again who could conceivably want minutes, and I don't even know if that's necessarily a bad thing. Like, I understand, I understand the way that you don't want that because you can cause some problems with that, where a dude's not getting minutes when he says, I want them. you can have some problems. And
Trey Lyles is not going to be happy. I will say that right now. Trey Lyles is not going to be happy with the fact that there are now 3 power forwards ahead of him.
And you can also have a coach who ends up becoming too obsessed with trying to figure out. You have a coach with FOMO. Trying to figure out like, oh no, like, am I giving Lyles enough time because I really need to see what he is, but I also need to see what Lydon is, but I also need to see how Plumlee works with Millsap because maybe that pairing could work, but I also need to play Millsap and Jokic together because when we make the playoffs, I want them to be as comfortable as possible so I can just run them out there for a ton of minutes. And like, there are just a million different options, and you can have coaches trying out too much stuff. So I get the point against it, but it's also like, hey, the more assets, the better. If you think that this, and I don't think Plumlee is an asset on that contract, but if you think that fill in the blank is going to be an asset, then go do it. Like, go make that happen. But they're clogged up with bigs. Yeah. Like, we talk about how, like, Minnesota is clogged up with bigs. So are they. Yeah, Plumlee's a modern-style guy, but Plumlee's not really. I mean, Plumlee is an underrated passer. He's a great passer, too, actually.
Really good screen setter, too.
Yes, he is. But, I mean, he's not a defensive player, and he's not a rim protector by any means. And
what he does is he allows them to keep their offensive style for 48 minutes of a game. Whenever Jokic comes off the floor, Nikola Jokic is obviously a wholly unique talent, and I think it was going to be really difficult for them to run 48 minutes of the same style. With Plumlee, they found like the one guy where they could, run a facsimile of what Jokic does for them on the basketball floor. The problem is that Danny LaRue has what he calls the Nene test, right? Is a guy who signs a deal tradable like within 6 months of signing the deal. And I don't really know that deal for Mason Plumlee is tradable given this center market right now.
I think you're probably right. I think you're probably right. I think sometimes we see, quote unquote untradeable deals get traded. I do cover the Thunder, and I did hear a lot of people say Victor Oladipo was untradeable. So I don't know if everyone is if that sort of stuff is completely untradeable. But I mean, it's not like it's not the Enes Kanter contract, but it's not.
I would rather have Enes Kanter than I would rather have Mason Plumlee.
Oh, that's interesting. I want to see what the details are on that final year because I don't know what they are. So I want to see what the details are on that final year.
All right, Fred, before we move on, let's pay some bills. Fantasy football fans, the wait is over. Football is back. That means FanDuel is back. Fantasy football for everyday fans. There are new contests starting every single week. That means no busted seasons whenever your favorite player or the guy you drafted in the first round, like David Johnson, gets injured. There is something for everyone here. There are lots of contests to choose from, starting at just $1, going up all the way into the hundreds. Just pick a contest, choose your team, and watch your score in real time. Fred, if I remember correctly, you're a Jets fan, so you don't really have a whole lot of rooting interest this year. So, how is fantasy football going for you?
Low blow. How's fantasy football going for me? I have as many wins as the Jets right now.
Oh boy!
I was winning going into Monday Night Football this week, and then I lost. It's a rough life. The Jets are bound for 0-16. Marshawn Lynch is dancing all over them. It's a fun time, really, for me in the NFL.
I love Marshawn Lynch dancing on that Jets team. Over 2.5 million players have won a cash prize playing fantasy sports on FanDuel. Sign up today. Go to FanDuel.com, click the Join Now button, and use my code GameTheory. That's GAMETHEORY. Try FanDuel for free with no deposit required. Visit FanDuel.com to claim your free contest and play for a share of $10,000. Just sign up using promo code GameTheory. That's FanDuel.com. Promo code Game Theory, void where prohibited. Let's talk about the Utah Jazz. I don't think this Jazz team is going to be nearly as bad as what a lot of people do this year after losing Gordon Hayward, if only because they have the defense to fall back on, and it's really hard to lose more than 45 games in a season whenever your defense is probably going to be one of the 3 best in the NBA.
Yeah, I agree with you. Their defense is going to be real good. I mean, Hayward, but they lose. I mean, they lose defense with Hayward too.
They do,
which is something people don't really talk about. They talk about obviously all the offense they're going to lose with Hayward, but they lose a lot of defense with him too. I mean, Ingles is solid, but he's not Gordon Hayward. They still got Gobert. They lost Hill, but they're replacing him with. I mean, Hill's a very good defensive player. But if you can get 70 games of Ricky Rubio, that's better than the 48 games or 50 games, whatever it was, they got of George Hill last year as a defender.
And I would say Ricky Rubio is a slightly better defender than George Hill. It's not a big difference, but I think there is a small difference in Ricky Rubio being just better than George Hill.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I'm curious to see how he's going to be with Quinn Snyder as his coach. I really like Quinn Snyder. I think he's a really good coach.
Agreed.
So I think Utah will be solid. I mean, I think they're going to be the best. If I had to rank defenses right now, I think I put them either number 1 or number 2. Them and Golden State, in my opinion, are the 2 best defenses in the league right now.
Plus, they get Derek Favors for a full season. I'll be interested to see how
Derek Favors cannot be worse than he was last year.
Yeah, and
I just can't imagine how he could be worse.
And he'll have a now off season to kind of maybe get some things together a little bit more. He's in a contract year, if I remember correctly, as well. So he really does need to get things together this year. And playing with Rudy Gobert is not a great fit necessarily, but it's a situation that I think they kind of just have to embrace at this stage. Like, they just have to find a way to get their best players on the floor. I'll also bring up Epe Udoh, who is a guy you know and love all too well. He was the best player in Europe last year, and he is now on this team for a contract that is just, essentially a veteran's minimum contract that, I think Dante Cunningham just signed for like $3.2 million. That's what Epe Udoh is getting, and I would rather have Epe Udoh. So, like, there are a lot of really good players on this team. There are a lot of really good defenders on this team that I think will help them continue to succeed on that end.
I do love Epe Udoh. What a great guy. He's a great guy. He's an excellent guy.
I have never met Epe Udoh, but I've never heard a bad word about him as a human.
You won't. He's an excellent guy. I mean, you want to talk about one of the smartest people in the NBA. That dude. He is bright. And he is really smart.
Joe Ingles is another guy. Like, you will never hear a bad word about Joe Ingles from any person who covers the NBA. He trash talks on the court. Like, he is awesome with the way that he plays. He plays with intensity, but off the floor, incredibly nice dude from what I've been told.
Didn't Joe Ingles get cut by the Clippers while his wife was on a flight from Australia to LA to see his first game?
Yeah, that would sound right. Yeah, I mean, they definitely cut him. I know that. His wife is like a famous Australian netballer as well, like on their national team. And like, he is, the fact that the Clippers cut him in favor of some of the wings that they have run out over the years.
Do you remember who it was for? You remember who they cut him for?
Is it like Allen Anderson or something?
Jared Cunningham.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Yeah. That was the talent misevaluation there.
Rock Divers coming up in the
They had him in camp, and they chose Jared Cunningham over him. I forget who it was. Someone was hurt. Who was the backup point guard last year? That year it was Collison hurt. The backup point guard was like hurt at the beginning of the year, so they cut Ingles, and that's why they kept Jared Cunningham. But I can't remember who it is.
Joe Ingles, better point guard than Jared Cunningham.
The Jazz, they're going to be really good. What do you think their offense is going to look like? Like, it's going to be a lot of Rubio dribbling, I imagine. I imagine it's going to be a lot of pick and roll with Gobert, and like Rodney Hood's going to have to be more involved as a ball handler. I think they're going to try to probably evolve Rodney Hood as a creator, whether for himself or for other people. Like, this is kind of the year where they imagine they're going to have to be hoping for like the Rodney Hood evolution of him as a guy with the ball, right?
Yeah, I think that's the key. They need Rodney Hood to be like a near 20-point per game scorer on efficiency. He is a good pick and roll ball handler who can score in screens. Obviously a really good shooter. He was hurt for a lot of last year, so I would throw away the numbers there, really. This is his year. He needs to really step up and be a significant difference maker for them. I'll also point to Dante Exum and Donovan Mitchell as being really integral pieces to what the Jazz want to do. They need one of those two guys to be a competent rotation player who can give them consistent offense off the bench.
Yeah. I like Mitchell. I think
like
he's
them
good.
both, to be honest. I think they're both very good basketball players.
I wouldn't be surprised if he was like one of those rookies where you're like, oh man, he's really contributing in like 20 minutes a game. Like he's like one of the few rookies who is actually, making. There are a few guys who I think you could say that about this year because I think this is a particularly good rookie class, but I would not be surprised if he was one of those guys where you're like, oh, the kid from Utah is giving them like one of the guys who my dad would call the kid from Utah,
Yeah.
He's giving them 20 minutes. The kid from Utah, what's his name? It's Donovan Mitchell, Dad.
Yeah, the guy who jumps really high. Yeah, that guy. Oh,
he's good.
God. Yeah, he's good. They still have Joe Johnson to provide some offense as well. I would imagine.
I love Joe Johnson's career.
They will still try and bring Joe Johnson off the bench probably in that small ball 4 role to provide offense and go up against second units and just be the dominant, second unit scorer that he can be. Alec Burks is another guy that they bring back.
By the way, Joe Johnson's career is amazing and doesn't get enough credit because people just like to mock him for I hate when people say 7-time All-Star Joe Johnson in a mocking sense. Like, dude, Joe Johnson has had an amazing career. Joe Johnson had such a good career. Like, why is it a crime to have a very good career and not have an incredible career? Like, he has had a very good career. Just because he got a contract that was too big in Atlanta, people have been, crapping on Joe Johnson for such a long time. But man, that guy is a pro. He's been a great teammate every single place that he's gone. He's like an unassuming guy. Meanwhile, he's had all of these different evolutions to where he was like the guy who couldn't develop in Boston, and then he was the guy who thrived in Phoenix, and maybe he could actually do well in a big role, and then he was the lead guy in Atlanta. Then he was like the vet in Brooklyn starting to transition, and now he's just like this stretch 4 who comes off the bench for a playoff team and comes in and hits
balls the hell out.
Winners. Right, he's hit more game winners. He just wants to take the last shot every damn time. He's hit more game-winning buzzer beaters than any player in the league over the last decade, I think. He just comes in during a playoff series against the Clippers and is legitimately one of the 5 best players in the series. He's a great vet to have on your team. He might be more obsessed with yoga than any player not named Kyle Singler in the NBA. He's had a great career. And I just don't think he gets enough credit. I think he gets mocked unfairly, way too much, and I think he's had an excellent career, and I think it deserves to be. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer, but I think it deserves to be praised. I think he's had an excellent career, and people should. That stuff pisses me off. He doesn't deserve that.
I think the fact that you can bring up the words Hall of Fame in conjunction with Joe Johnson and not get laughed out of the room says a lot, right? I don't think he's a Hall of Famer based on merit. I will not be surprised if he gets in, just given the standard that the NBA Hall or the Basketball Hall of Fame has. It's exceedingly low, but at the same time, I would probably not put him in. But this is a guy that has had an incredible career. Every single stop that he's been a useful basketball player, and except maybe Miami.
He shot well in Miami.
He did, but I would understand why they would be a little bit annoyed. Regardless, he's just been a pro's pro, and he was legit the best player on an Atlanta team that made the playoffs every single year that he was there. That's kind of awesome. That is a really good basketball player. And you're right. He doesn't necessarily deserve mocking for that. Alec Burks,
if somebody offered you a contract that you were like, I don't deserve this money, but I get to write about basketball and do my job, and they're going to pay me 20% more than what I'm worth, what are you going to say? I'll do it for 20% less so I don't have to deal with the Twitter jokes? You're taking that money. Come on. Don't mock him. Mock the Hawks for giving him the contract, but it's silly.
100% agreed. Alec Burks comes back as well. For those who forget who Alec Burks is, I wouldn't really blame you. Has rarely played over the course of the last few years for the Utah Jazz. When he's been on the floor, though, he's not been terrible. A guy that, from 2014 to 2016, he played like 125 games or something, averaged like 15 points a game. Like, he can be a useful player. It's just finding the right role for him and hoping that he doesn't get hurt, because he's a guy who can handle the ball and do some interesting stuff.
He's talented. He's always been talented. He's a talented scorer, but yeah, who knows if he can stay healthy? That's the problem with so many of these Utah guys. Who knows if he can stay healthy?
Yeah.
Like, Joe Johnson always stays healthy, but he's 36, so who knows? And Gobert's had some injuries in his past, and Favors had some injuries in his past, and Rubio's had some injuries in his past, and Burks has had some injuries in his past, and Hood has had some injuries in his past, and I'm just naming the whole damn roster. Like that's the worry with Utah, is that, like, if they're healthy, I think they're the number one defense. And last year they even had some injuries, but like 2 years ago, I thought they were going to win 50 games and make the playoffs, and everybody got hurt, and they won 40, and they missed the playoffs by a game. And like, I think, if they had even average health, obviously they're making the playoffs. I don't know if they're winning 50 if they have average health that year, but like they're winning 45. Like,
they got ravaged by injury last year and won 51. Like,
yeah, if they get ravaged by injury again, the West is so good, I don't know if they're a playoff team. But if they have average health, they could be the best defense in the league. And if they're like the 20th offense, that could be good enough for like 44 wins.
I will say this about Utah. I think the floor here is low because of the injuries. If they ended up like winning 30 games because Rudy Gobert plays 40 games and Joe Johnson finally feels his age and Ricky Rubio plays 60 games, like, I don't think it's out of the question that they only win 30. I also think that if Rudy Gobert stays healthy and we get a bounce back from Derek Favors and, the screen and roll with Ricky Rubio works well, they could win 45. Like, it's a tricky situation to spot. It's a tricky situation to figure out. I do think the floor is low, though. If you were trying to make me predict if I think they make the playoffs, I would probably say yes right now. I'd probably have
Where would you put them?
So I would have them below the Warriors, San Antonio, Houston, Thunder, Minnesota, and Denver. That might be it.
Then you got
I'd probably have them the 7-8.
The Clippers in that realm. You got Portland in that realm.
You know what? I'd probably have them below Memphis too. Still, like, I'm still just a believer in Memphis until they show me that I shouldn't be a believer.
So are you having Portland out and the Clippers out?
I do have the Clippers out right now. I will say that. That's Portland's a tricky one too. I would probably.
You sounded like a believer on Portland. I'm surprised by this. I figured you would have had Portland at least 7.
I'm like not really a believer. Like, I'm kind of a believer.
This is a good transition to Portland, by the way.
It is a good transition to Portland, and we'll move to Portland now. The reason that we brought up Portland and why Fred thinks I'm a believer in Portland is that I said if any team won this division, I wouldn't be like outlandishly shocked. And Fred said he'd be surprised if Portland won. So I think I can make a case, like say that the Paul George, Russell Westbrook thing doesn't go as well as anticipated, and Utah stays healthy and has the number one defense in the NBA. I can see Utah winning this division. If Portland with the Lillard, McCollum, Nurkic trio plays as well throughout this season as they did in the final 20 games of last season, I can see Portland making a run at this division and winning 47 games. I also believe that if one of Lillard or McCollum gets hurt for any period of time whatsoever, Portland is probably winning 35 games. Like, that's just the reality of the matter, and that's a scary spot to be in. So, like, that's tough. On a pure talent basis, I think Utah is a better team than Portland. But I am a little bit more skeptical on all of the pieces in Utah staying healthy than I am all of the pieces in Portland staying healthy, I guess. I don't know how to kind of rectify those two situations, though, because, like, you never want to predict injury. You know what I mean? Like, you never want to project that.
Right. Right, unless it's like written into it,
Right, honestly,
some of Utah's history.
Like with the Clippers,
Right.
I think we can probably pencil in Blake Griffin missing 20 games.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard the same thing.
So
they're worried he might be out for the first, till December or something.
Right. So that's
which is why I think it's possible the Clippers might end up being the odd man out.
Right. That's like a pre-existing condition, though, and that's why you can count it. If Blake is
healthy on day one, I would pick the Clippers to make the playoffs.
You're a Clippers fan, though. That doesn't count.
No, I'm not a Clippers fan. I grew up a Clippers fan. I'm not a Clippers fan. I lost it. I totally lost it, man. It's sad. I wish I didn't lose it. You view the league so differently, but I totally lost it. 2 years ago, I lost it.
Yeah, I'll talk about the Clippers when I do another podcast, but Blake Griffin and Danilo Gallinari and DeAndre Jordan doesn't fit well together, and the guards are all one-way talents, which is a great spot to be in. And
you're right. Well, kind of. Patrick Beverley's got some offensive skills.
He can shoot. Also, Patrick Beverley can shoot, but he's not a point. He's an undersized two.
No, he's not. But they're running their offense through Blake. I think the difference is.
And Milos.
I agree with your analysis. I think what the difference is, and correct me if I'm wrong, is I probably think Blake's a better player than you do.
No, I think when Blake's healthy, he's a top 10 player in the league. He's really good.
Yeah, well, that's why I say if Blake is healthy on game one, oh man, I think he's going to go nuts this year. I think he's going to have the best year of his career. Him without Chris Paul, he's going to be able to get defensive rebounds and go, and he's going to be able to run the offense. He was a 5 assist a game power forward with Chris Paul handling the ball all the time. Is he going to be a 7 assist a game guy this year? That really is a question. That's not me implying that he's definitely going to be a 7 assist a game guy, by the way. But I'm not going to be shocked by that. He's one of the 3 or 4 best passing big men in the NBA. He's an incredible facilitator, and he was knocking down threes at 3 threes a game at the end of the year, shooting in the mid to high 30s from 3. He is an unbelievable offensive player, and if he's healthy for 82 games, he could go nuts without Chris Paul, and I think he could hold him up to 45 wins. I think that could happen.
So, but I'm going to talk about Blake on a different podcast, but I will just leave it with this. He is not going to be the 3rd best player in the NBA like he was in 2014. He's just not going to be that. I don't think. He's just not athletic enough to do that anymore.
Yeah, no, I don't think he's going to be the 3rd best player in the NBA, but he is so much more skilled than he was in 2014.
He is.
When he finished 3rd in MVP, and he is so much more skilled now. Yeah. As a ball handler, as a passer. I mean, he was a great passer then, but the array of passes he's able to make nowadays as a ball handler, he's so much better, and just specifically as a shooter.
And by the way, we brought up the idea of Paul Millsap turning into a totally different player. Blake Griffin's another pretty good example of that. When he came out of Oklahoma,
all he does is dunk.
All he does is dunk thing. That was a little bit overstated and ham-handed, but he's now turned into genuinely one of the most skilled forwards in the NBA. He didn't ever really pass at Oklahoma. He didn't really, ever shoot at Oklahoma. He has now developed a skill set beyond what anyone could have envisioned whenever they selected him number 1 overall.
Yeah, you know who else is good, which just came to my mind a little bit? Julius Randle.
No, Randle. The thing with Randle, though,
Randle played that way in high school.
Yeah,
Cal changed him, but if we're talking specifically from how he played in college, that's kind of a thing.
I mean, you could say the same about Towns too.
I guess that's true.
Yeah,
that's true. I guess that's kind of the way they're used versus what their actual skill set is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh well, I tried.
So the Trailblazers.
I don't think their defense is going to be good enough. That's why I'm more down on the Blazers than you. I just don't think their defense is going to be good enough to take them past 45. I think maybe they win 45, but Nurkic is not going to help them defensively. Lillard's not going to help.
He's not a terrible defender. I will say that. He's a pretty solid rim protector just from taking up space inside.
He doesn't really move well at all, though.
No, he doesn't. He's nimble for being 290 pounds, but yeah.
If he gets there, he's actually, you're right, he's not bad at defending the rim, but an underrated skill set, and this sounds so simplistic, but people talk about guys who are good rim protectors, and the one thing that kind of bothers me when they do it is they talk about, like, this guy's a good rim protector because when he's at the rim, he's able to protect the rim. But to me, maybe the best skill in being able to protect the rim is being able to go out and then recover to the rim and protect the rim. Like, part of protecting the rim is being able to get to the rim. And he doesn't really do that all that well. And there are ways to work around it. And I do think Terry Stotts is a very good coach. And there are ways to figure out how to work him defensively. But I don't think he's such a good defender. Like, what's the difference between him defensively and Brook Lopez?
I think
Brook Lopez has similar rim protection skills.
Yeah, I think he's a little bit more nimble than Lopez is. And I think he is a little bit better of a rim protector than Lopez is. And he's a much better rebounder than Brook Lopez is. And I think that Lopez is actually an underrated rebounder because he is really good at boxing guys out and clearing out space for other guys to come in and grab rebounds. But Nurkic is a better rebounder. He's just one of the best rebounders in the NBA.
You're definitely right about that. Nurkic is without a doubt a better rebounder.
And you know what, though?
Much better offensive rebounder than defensive.
Here's what I'll say, though. Next to him, Noah Vonleh was sneaky pretty solid as a defender last year next to him. Al-Farouq Aminu battled injuries last year. I think he battled a hamstring injury for a lot of the year. Assuming he comes back from that, he's a plus defender. Mo Harkless is mobile at the very least. He's not going to be like an awesome defender, but he can be a solid team defender. Okay, the guards are not going to be great defensively. Like, we can just call that out now. But, like, there are not terrible defenders, and plus they're going to get a bit more time out of Ed Davis this year too, who missed a lot of time last year, and he's a good defender. So I think they're going to be a little bit better defensively than what they were last year. I don't think they're going to be a top half of the NBA defensive team, but if they can be like 17th in the NBA defensively and, you know, just kind of stick around that top 7, top 8 NBA teams offensively, you know, they can get up to like 46 wins, I think. I think that I'm going to take them to pick like right around 41, 42, but I think their ceiling's like 46, 47.
Yeah, maybe. I said 45, so, you know, I'm not going to grapple over 1 or 2 wins there. That's fine. I mean, we seem to be in about the same point. I just, when you said that you wouldn't be surprised if they won, if you think their ceiling's 46 or 47, I guess I would be surprised if the winner of the Northwest Division had only 46 or 47 wins. Because I think one of these teams is winning 50.
Probably, but, I mean, they could just beat up on each other, too. I mean, I know that the NBA schedule doesn't necessarily allow for, like, you know, a single division to just beat up on each other. It's just kind of not the way it works. Like, there's really only a difference. I think the study is, like, you know, 2 or 3 games or 2 or 3 wins worth of you know, schedule difference each year from the best schedule to the worst schedule. So, you know, I don't know. Like, these teams are all really good teams, but in that they're playoff teams and probably like top 14 teams in the entire NBA. But I don't think they're all like incredible teams other than maybe Oklahoma City, who I think we're both really high on, but like that could go poorly. Like we just don't know enough about them yet either to like say for sure that they're going to be awesome.
What was your Thunder number, by the way? Where did you have them?
I didn't give a Thunder number. I think if you made me predict, I would say they win like between 50 and 52. But
yeah,
again, like
52.
I think that the floor is, you know, 42, 43, 44, you know?
Right. Yeah, no, I'm with you. If everything goes terribly, yeah, that's fine. I don't think that's going to happen.
Neither do I, again.
Like, and I think somebody, like, wouldn't even surprise me if Utah won 48 because they were just so good on defense and Quinn Snyder coached them up enough on offense to where they got up to like 18 and they won 48 in the same way that like the Tibbs Bulls teams would win 46 to 48 when like Derrick Rose would get hurt and like they were number 1. They don't even need to be 18 in offense, honestly. Like those Bulls teams won the one year the Bulls were first in defense, in defensive efficiency, and I think 29th in offense, and they won 48 that year. And I'm not saying the Jazz aren't going to be 29th, I don't think, but like if you're number one in defense, like you can be 22 in offense and still win like 48 games. So like I don't think 45 from Portland is going to cut it. But I don't know. Maybe I'm grappling over this 1 point, which I can't get over for some strange reason.
So I will say this: I think one of Minnesota, Denver, Utah, or Portland wins 48 games. Wins like over 47.5 games. I think that one of them also wins under 40 games.
Yeah, I'm cool with that. That's fine. Someone's going to have, one of those five is just going to have a disaster season.
Yeah, every single division in the NBA last year had at least one team that won fewer than 38 games.
Who's the most likely to have the disaster season?
I think I would probably pick Utah.
Yeah, just the injuries.
The injuries, I think the floor is just a little bit lower for Utah. But
ironic.
I think that their median point is probably a little bit higher too. It's them and Portland are really close, I think. And like Minnesota has 9 games to make up on everyone else in this division. So like, do they just not come together in the way that we're anticipating? It's an entirely new roster. So like, it's not for sure that they're going to be awesome.
Ironic the floor would be so low considering how high above sea level they are.
I hate you so much.
Hey, we've been podcasting for like 2 hours, man. This is where I go.
Yeah, we went way too long on the Northwest Division, man. But it genuinely is to me the most interesting division in basketball this year because the strength from top to bottom is as close as any division that I can think of in recent history, at least.
Yeah, it's actually really fun. It's a fun division. I mean, if people don't care about divisions, but it's a fun division. It is. It's probably the most fun division. Honestly, I haven't even thought about the most fun divisions in the league, so I'm just kind of pulling this out of my ass right now. But like, is it the most fun division in the league? Probably. Maybe. Am I making that up? I feel like it is. I'm going to say it is. Why not?
It probably is. I think you can make a case that every single one of these teams is a top 13 team in the NBA. Which is kind of crazy, right? Like, you just kind of look around. Like, the other teams that I would throw in there, Boston and Toronto, Cleveland, Washington, San Antonio and Houston, and Golden State. Like, you can say the Clippers, you can say Milwaukee, you can say, maybe you believe Charlotte makes a leap. Maybe you think that New Orleans is somehow going to work out in a way. Like you could say that like some of these teams are better than like the bottom end of the Northwest, but I don't know that I would. Like I feel pretty good about all these teams being top half of the NBA teams, which is kind of crazy.
Man, New Orleans, how depressing. That's the only time that New Orleans was even mentioned in this podcast was you saying that the team in a mocking way about how they might work out in some kind of way. Like, that, man, that's that after they make that big DeMarcus Cousins trade, that's got to be depressing if you're a Hornets fan, Pelicans fan. I still do that. I still call them the Hornets.
Just call them New Orleans, man. Makes your life so much easier.
You're right. It does. Hey, New Orleans is my favorite city to visit. I met with my editor today, and we went over all the cities that we're going, that, like, we went over, because I don't go to every game. I'm going to go, like, 35-ish this year, 35 road games. Yeah. So, like, we went through to pick the ones we're not going to go to, and we, like, rate them 1, 2, 3 is, like, definitely going to, definitely not going to, and somewhere in the middle. And, like,
please tell me you said definitely not going to Detroit.
Detroit is a 2 right now, because it depends on the temperature of the team, because there's the Reggie Jackson stuff.
Yeah, that sucks.
That's fine. The only problem I have with Detroit is that the arena is so far from the airport, so it's a pain.
And that it's Detroit.
No, I'm fine with Detroit.
Not a fan. Not a fan.
I like my job. I get to travel to a bunch of cities. I get to see stuff. Whatever. I stay for the most part when I'm in cities, unless like I'm in like New Orleans, LA, that kind of stuff. I'm for the most part I'm chilling in the room. I look up what I try to do in advance, if I can do it, if my flights work out, I try to look up like the best restaurants in each city before I go there, and I make reservations, and I try to hit up the best restaurant in every city when I go. So I'm the only person who gets like his meals paid for on the road and still loses money because I like go through my I use up the amount of money that's allotted for food for me, and then I pay on top of like for myself on top of it just because I want really good food in all these other cities. But so it's fun. It makes the traveling fun. So I can make any city fun.
In LA, what is your go-to food?
I usually pick a sushi spot.
It's a good idea.
Because I live in Oklahoma, and sushi is my favorite cuisine. And I live in Oklahoma, and there's one good sushi place in Oklahoma City. But like I do, I've done Sugarfish, I've done Kazunori, and now both of those have opened in New York. So I'm not going to do either of those. But I'll usually pick a sushi spot if I'm in LA.
Yeah, I don't blame you there. Sushi out here is great.
Or just some kind of seafood.
Yeah, no, you can't get great seafood in Oklahoma, I'd imagine.
I rotate it. Yeah, I rotate it, except in New Orleans. I'll rotate. I'll try to get 2 meals. I'll do like a really heavy late lunch before the actual game. I'll do the night before dinner, and then I'll do a really heavy late lunch before the game, and I'm always sick for the game. Every time, I'm always sick. It's like disgusting. I get like a 3-course meal, except it's just like 3 main courses. I always go to Mr. B's, which I love. I don't know if you've ever been to Mr. B's in New Orleans, but holy crap, man. It's like
I have not.
Oh, God, it'll change your life. It's unbelievable. It's like the barbecue shrimp there is ridiculous. The seafood gumbo is absurd. It also has like the best cheesecake I've ever had in my entire life. Like, it's just like, oh my God, man. It's the most ridiculous thing ever.
I'm
like, oh, I love that place. I'm so happy. But yeah, so getting back to it, where you were talking about New Orleans, I said New Orleans was a 2, and my editor said, like, you're going to a few more games this year. Like, let's see if you can maybe take a break at some point, just get some mental health before you get to the playoffs. And they like go to New Orleans, like their second to last road game of the year. And I was like, Caleb, for mental health, if you can have me work in New Orleans, that would honestly help me. So he's like, fine, change that to a 3. So now I'm going to both New Orleans games because of that. Purely because I'm like, really go eat at Mr. B's.
Oh my
God. The food
God.
Sitting, man, is like nothing else. I am disgusting in that city. There was a shrimp shortage in New Orleans after I left because I just ate all of the shrimp.
Fred, tell the people where they can find your work. Tell the people about your podcast again.
Okay, so I am on Twitter at Fred Katz, FredKatz. You can check out the podcast. The OKC Dream Team just recorded the first episode Tuesday morning. I think it's really good. I think it's really fun. It's a unique product. If you liked like the True Hoop podcast that ESPN, that Jay did, and all those guys did, like it's really inspired by that podcast, where it's just a bunch of guys just like talking about basketball and screaming over each other and trying to be both goofy and fun and personable, because it's not like we're 4 random people. Like we're really good friends, the 4 of us. So It makes sense. I should really say the 3 of us, because Royce is not, on it, even though he's probably going to guest on it a decent amount. But like we're all really good friends, so it's going to work out well. I'm really excited about it, and I think it's been awesome so far, and we're all really enjoying it. Our text thread has been very active, and you can also obviously find my work on normantranscript.com. Check out my blog, Thunder Road, normantranscript.com/sports/Thunder Road. And if you don't want to have to go to that URL every single time and search for stuff, just check on Twitter. I tweet out everything I write.
Go follow Fred. He does a great job. One of my favorite people to have on this podcast. He has been on the podcast. You've got to be up there in terms of guest appearances on this thing.
Yeah, I've been on a few times.
Like I would imagine
5 times.
You're in the top 10, maybe like the top 5 even.
I feel like this should count as 2.
Until next time, we will talk soon. Bye.